Well, the time is just gone 13 minutes past 9 as we continue with the broadcast this morning, and still to come, we've got Donovan Williams with us shortly. And the question we will be raising, are trade unions still revolutionary? And also talking with the SANCO National Chairperson, Feroz Mohammed, this morning, looking at their pre Ramadan ladies seminar. We will be talking with FYMO. And we'll be talking with Mullah Tahir Sallu as well, looking ahead at some of the Ramadan initiatives that are coming through. So a fair amount to unpack this morning from now right until 10 a.m. here on News and Views. But right now we're going across to be joined by the South African National Civic Organizations, SANCO, Donovan Williams. Donovan, good morning to you. As always, an absolute pleasure having you with us.
Thanks, Idiot. I love coming on Salam Media. You're always trying to tackle issues that are of vital importance, and your bravery and courage in doing that is definitely noticeable.
Well, we are looking at a strike that is taking place, and it's getting very, very ugly at this point in time, the Nahau strike. And, we've seen so much in the last few days, the intimidation, the violence that has accompanied the strike, and looking at trade unions, historically looking at the roles that trade unions had played. We know that they are key players, and even in terms of looking at the ANC government as well, to a large extent reliant on the unions like COSATU as well. But this post of yours that I've read, where you ask this question, are trade unions still a revolutionary? And if you could just take us through, what prompted you to actually write this post, because there is a fair amount of history that is contained in this post, Donovan.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for reading it as well. It was actually written before the Nahau strike, just the day before, and before things flared up. And was prompted by not Nahau, not COSATU, but an AMCU strike taking place in the metal sector, where workers, clerical workers, so the office workers who are not part of the strike, were being harassed, intimidated, etc., from entering the premises so they could work. Now, those persons are not who the people who the workers are striking against, and that got me thinking that we've got a problem in our country. We've got a serious problem, and it's across the board. It's not just Nahau, it's not just COSATU. It is any organization, any grouping that believe they have a gripe, and it could be a correct complaint, it could be a correct matter. They believe the law doesn't apply to them, that they can be lawless, they can attack anybody, and they take out their anger on society as a whole. Now, it is. I mean, I've seen footage today. I've got videos this morning, I guess maybe because of the post, of what seems to be a medical doctor, basically being harassed and intimidated by a lot of men, a couple of women, because she seems to have videoed them being unruly, and they are attacking, and they basically wanted to out of the place. I've also seen footage of what seems to be in the west of Johannesburg, of communities where this is not, I'm not sure if this is EFF or Nahau, but communities angry with people protesting or having some protests where they've barricaded the roads and lit some fires, coming in, and basically it's going to be a physical confrontation where they're saying, no, you're not going to do this. So essentially, you have a matter in our country that, and it's a serious matter, that whereas we fought against injustice, and we fought against it. Yes, we had a defiance campaign where you broke the law, etc. But it was all organized and it was disciplined. Whereas now, you believe that if you have an injustice meted out against you, that gives you a license to do anything. And that license to do anything is not just directed at those you are fighting against. It's directed at everybody. And this is where the problem becomes, is that when municipal workers in Cape Town kick over bins or whatever, when the leadership in Cape Town raises a problem with that, The leadership in other political parties, so in other words, the DA raises it, so it's Helen Ziller who raises it. We are all quiet who are not part of the DA because, this is a political competition, but not saying on principle, this is wrong. This shouldn't be done. And this is why the question becomes about revolutionary. Because if it's about power and just about wages, that's fine. But trade unions and progressive organizations historically have put aside their narrow objectives for what society needs. That was what a major thing of what the struggle was about. It wasn't necessarily sectarian, and this is worrying that in a post-apartheid South Africa, in a democratic South Africa, we have anger and frustration about things not being done that we think we deserve, and we take it out on society, even if we're taking out on other victims. That's the first thing. The second is, I want us to also distinguish between the demands of, say, a Nahawu and the behavior of people who are part of a strike or part of a protest. The demands may be quite in order. The demands, I think that I've spoken on other platforms where I've tried to draw a distinction between the public service wage bill and the public sector wage bill. And the public service wage bill is not high. The public service wage bill has not increased a lot. There are workers who haven't really got proper increases for quite a long time. And as you know, the cost of living has increased dramatically during COVID and after it. So it doesn't mean that we're disagreeing with how a Nahawu or a PSA or whichever union the demands they are putting. We are disagreeing, though, where they treat people who are working in those institutions as enemies. They treat communities and broader society as enemies. There aren't enemies in a democratic or society. We're not at war. There aren't enemies. There are opponents. There are people you disagree with. There are people you have a right to protest. You can operate within those. You do not need to vandalize a property. You do not need to harass people, and you do not need to treat us South Africans, your fellow South Africans, like we are the problem. I think that is palpably unfair.
Well, it certainly is. And, you make this point and you articulate it very well in your article, where even if someone is sympathetic towards the cause of the union, towards the cause that they are actually striking for, there have been ways in the past, and you make mention of this in your article, where in support of or in solidarity with the striking workers, there have been options where, boycotting, for instance, the products of that
Mm.
company, and rather than taking this intimidatory, this violent nature, and as you mentioned just a few seconds ago, making the community your enemy.
Yeah, in the 80s, because I'm pretty old, so my teenage years were in the 80s. That I remember we boycotted Cadbury chocolates and sweets because workers were on strike there. I recall that, being naughty and whatever in those years, we even boycotted SAB products because there was a FAU strike. There was a big strike on SAB. And so at that stage, trade unions would go out of their way to get community support. And as you know, I'm speaking on behalf of SANCO. I come from the Civic movement. The Civic movement in South Africa pioneered consumer boycotts. We pioneered consumer boycotts. It was a huge tool against apartheid. But yet, you can't have consumer boycotts today because the trade union is making it seem like it is, or trade unions in general is making it seem like society is at fault, like communities are at fault. So where is the reaching out of trade unions, not just by COSATU, right? All trade unions, right? And I mean, we noticed that there was a statement issued by SATU, which is a sister union, the teachers union of Nahawu. They are about the largest two trade unions in COSATU, if I'm not mistaken. And SATU issued a statement and taking Nahawu to task. However, that statement by SATU was because SATU teachers were in a workshop and were harassed by Nahawu workers on strike. Now, whereas we have also seen it when SATU goes on strike, when their teachers go on strike, they don't care about the children who may have exams. There isn't a way that workers protest, that workers take up their matters in a way that communities aren't hurt. And why is that? How come that is the case? So whereas we come from a tradition where trade unions were part and parcel of the community, where trade unions said, when we take up matters, it is we are taking up matters for all of us. And so now it seems only shop floor matters are the ones that are of priority, and everything else becomes a distant second. And that concerns us, and it must concern us. As a SANCO, we we work with trade unions. We expect that we would be working, not politically, but on politics and social matters. But you don't have that. The truth of the matter is, you have our society is quite divided. There's a lot of frustration, exceptionally a lot of frustration, and a lot of anger, and we know it. I mean, there's so many things that have been going wrong, and because of that, we take the anger out on everybody. We don't. There's no sitting down and saying, okay, how do we deal with load shedding? Do we deal with load shedding by saying that, let me go and get as much cable as I can just to sort myself? Let me go and steal my neighbors have got solar panels, so I'm going to go and steal their solar panels. Is that how we deal with it? And that's what we're going to be coming to at a stage. And this cannot go on. South Africa cannot allow this to go on. And as I said, I've seen footage this morning of communities, and this is going to happen more and more. Communities saying, no, we are tired. We are not going to allow you to barricade roads, because it's always generally some lumpen minority that decides to actually go that way. And let me not get political leaders off the hook here. In particular, you had that when you feel you have political leaders feel that when they have an injustice, they can say and do anything. You have an EFF do this time and time again in Parliament, right, where the rules don't matter. So if the rules don't matter for public representatives in Parliament, why should it matter for people in society? If the rule you've had that when you are protesting against your discipline, you're being disciplined by your political party, then the rules don't matter. Right? When you feel there is a demarcation matter where you're put in one province as opposed to another, as we've seen in places like Bushbuck Ridge and etc. and that, then the rules don't matter. Then you burn things and you can do whatever. But we are in a society. There aren't enemies in society. We have rules that allow you to protest, that protect you, that make certain that nothing can be done against you. But why? And even the saddest tragedy of Marikana, before that tragedy, before that heavy shooting, did you have workers obeying the rules? Right? And this is I don't want to leave it just to trade unions, because our organizations, be it even students, be it how they react, how the police and that react to striking or protesting groups and organizations, we have problems. We have problems because we think that the moment we have a problem, we have a gripe, we can act in any manner whatsoever. Whereas, how did we operate when we struggled against apartheid? Why weren't we weren't this anarchic? We honestly weren't this anarchic. And I that's why I asked the questions. Trade unions are a leadership cohort within our society. Their
Yes,
leadership
Donovan.
must be.
The anarchy that you speak of, and this has become a pandemic of its own. It's become like a cancer that's been eating through society, and it's not only the unions. You cited the example of politicians, and we know with the March 20 strike that has come up, we've seen already the EFF laying the groundwork, going through residential areas, loud hailers announcing, "You will join us. If you don't, these could be the
You see?
consequences. Your business are at risk." Now, those threats are open threats, and there are many veiled threats that we can read along the way. That is just one example. You mentioned the students. When we see what has happened at Wits University as well, the business people in close proximity to the university, they've been threatened, they've been harassed. They've been threatened with looting, with burning. Now, this has filtered right across society, and it is being treated as the norm. And you make that point, like the sporting boycott. No normal sport in an abnormal society. What normality lies in all that we see playing around us, Donovan?
No, thank you, Ian. I think the example that you use with that, and and I think it's sad when the first marches and strikes that I participated in, no businesses, no person was in danger, nothing at all. But whereas today, hawkers and small businesses get attacked because you're scared to open your business or you're scared to open your little shop because let's not call it a business like it's some massive money spinning thing. Why is that? And when hawkers get looted, when somebody selling pap and flakes, street food gets looted by protesting workers or students, you must be saying, but what has happened? What is going on here, right? Have they done something wrong? And 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 when you have and the points you're making, I've even forgotten about March 20th. I really have. That may explain why there are talks about that way in communities there have been barricades, and I think it's in the west of Johannesburg, and the claim is that it's EFF supporters who are doing that. But as society, as mass society, and as SANCO, we're organizing communities. We are wondering now: are we supposed to get up and expect communities to put themselves in the firing line to stop this anarchy? And in our country, it can become racial because of the types of groupings that we have. It can even become who committed the most wrong. When you look at when we start to look at some of the footage that we are seeing on social media, some of the videos and that, as South Africans, we're going to have to stand up and we're going to have to start protecting our don't want to say property like it's more important than people, but it's our society actually. That we can't have this continuing, and we can't have this continuing in our name, because as much as there's a problem of delivery, as much as there are problems of load shedding and corruption and so forth, that does not give you a license to do so many wrongs. And this is where we are at, that there are so many wrongs. And that's why the question will become: trade unions who claim they are revolutionary, who claim that are there for the working class. How can you be there for the working class when you are the ones harassing, intimidating the working class and institutions there to serve the working class? Yes, we may agree with you that you have not got proper raises, that government hasn't given you proper wages for a while. We can support that. We could support you. But how can we support you when you treat us like the enemy? And all groupings must ask themselves these questions. And as SANCO, we're not going to tolerate this. We can't tolerate it anymore. Our members are harassed. Some of them are not able to go to work, or they're being docked salaries, because when they get there, they're being stopped from entering premises. And this is exactly what has happened. Communities can't be going through this anymore. It should not. We should not be going through this.
Well, Donovan, it's always an absolute pleasure having you with us.
Thank
Unfortunately,
you.
time has run out, but we wish you all the best and we thank you
Sure.
for your
Thank
time
you.
with us this morning.
Thank you, Ned.
Donovan Williams with us this morning. A quick break. We come back. We'll be joined by the SANCO National Chairperson, Feiruz Mohammed.